Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deb Fewster. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Victorian Council of Social Service, VCOSS. Thanks for joining us at short notice for this briefing on recovery and relief efforts in the wake of the devastating bushfires around our state. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country. VCOSS conducts its business on sovereign, unceded Aboriginal land. Today, I'm joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay respects to ancestors and elders and extend that respect to any First Nations people joining us today. I'd also like to point out that there are auto-generated captions available for today's webinar, and if you need to access this feature, you can turn on those auto-generated captions by clicking the closed caption tab on your Zoom taskbar. So let's get underway. Don't need to tell the people on this call that this is an extremely challenging time for many Victorians. The journey to recovery is just beginning, and we know that it will take many years. We also know that many of the impacted communities have already endured the Black Saturday and Black Summer fires. And as with all disasters, we know that those who experience poverty and disadvantage will be among those most severely affected. I want to acknowledge that the incredible work that your organisations are doing to support your communities, and because many of you are place-based services, I also want to acknowledge the impacts, not just in a kind of a professional sense in terms of the work that you do in community, but also acknowledging that you, your staff and colleagues may also be kind of personally affected at the same time you're seeking to kind of help your community as well. We know that emergencies are complex and every community is different. We have had a flurry of recovery package announcements by the Victorian Government in the past week. So really the purpose of today's session is to ensure that you, people working in the community sector, have the most up-to-date information on relief and recovery supports possible to help ensure that people can get access to supports that are out there. We've got a range of speakers with us today. We're going to have, we've got representatives from the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. We've got representative from Emergency Recovery Victoria, also from our colleagues at Municipal Association of Victoria, Consumer Affairs Victoria, and also Disaster Legal Help Victoria. And I'll introduce each of those speakers over the course of this next 45 minutes. Each will contribute valuable intel to build the kind of bigger picture of what's happening and what's out there. At the end, we'll have time for maybe a couple of questions from the audience, depending on how we go. If you do have a question, we will try and get to that at the end. Please use the Q&A box that's on that kind of Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen, not the chat function. So please put any questions you've got in the Q&A box. So to get us underway, it's now my privilege to hand over to Dean Purkis from Emergency Recovery Victoria. We're also, as I said, going to hear from Andrea Spiteri later on from DFFH. But over to you, Dean, in the first instance. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Deb, and good afternoon, everyone. As Deb mentioned, my name's Dean Purkis. I'm the Executive Director of Recovery Operations and Coordination at Emergency Recovery Victoria. I've got two items on the agenda. I'm going to merge them together. There's a situation update and then there's an overview of relief and recovery. It's probably easier to kind of do that as in one go. But I thought I might start by going right back to the beginning to give us the context for this, which was 10 days ago. It feels perhaps a bit longer than that for some of us. But on the Friday the 9th, we had catastrophic fire danger rating across 3/4 of the state. It was very windy. The air was dry. There's a lot of the state that's been in drought. We had dry lightning across much of Victoria, and that's a pretty bad combination for fire risk. And we all know what happened as a result of that. 70 or so fires took hold over the next 24 hours, and a state of disaster was declared. Those fires, most of them are still burning. So we've got 11 major fires still in the state line of control. And they're not going to go out anytime soon. So the reality is we're still at the start of the fire season in Victoria. And as we get high-risk days in the future, these fires will be risk again of impacting people across Victoria. So the impacts so far are very significant. And I'll quickly go through them now, but I want to underpin the fact that this is a very, very big disaster in a state sense across Victoria. So one person has lost their life as a result of the fires. We've had about 400,000 hectares of land have been burnt so far. Impact assessments are ongoing, so the impacts are not kind of finished yet, but we've so far identified about 1,300 structures which have been either damaged or destroyed, of which over 400 homes, primary places of residence. And I should mention that exceeds the number from the 2019-20 Eastern Victorian bushfires. So if you think back to 6-7 years ago when that happened and the scale of that event, in terms of homes lost, we are in that space already, and the impact assessments continue. That's been focused heavily around the Longwood fire, so the areas around there. We've also had major impacts to agriculture, so 25,000 livestock lost. And after the kind of major impacts on the Friday and the Saturday, we had 40,000 people or so with no power. So as we know, when you haven't got power, life becomes much more complex. Telecoms fail, and you don't have communications either. Water treatment plants going offline means potable water becomes unavailable. Roads closed because of trees being damaged around them, and these are all things that we saw and we see after any bushfire in the landscape. So, in terms of the focus for relief and recovery, and I spent the first 3 days of this in the state control centre. The initial relief tends to focus very much on emergency relief centres, so councils provide those. We had 16 centres open at the height of this on the Saturday. The immediate focus is on food, water, psychological first aid, things like that, meeting people's immediate needs. What we quickly find is that all these things are connected to each other. So in order to get telecoms and water back on, you need power. To get power back on, you need access to roads. To get roads back on, you need to clear the hazardous trees. So that's the kind of complexity in the first few days of trying to meet people's most basic needs. Register, Find, Reunite is a service that I'm sure most of you are aware of. That was stood up across most areas after the fires and was heavily used. So it was good to see that. As I say, we're speaking now, the kind of most immediate relief for people has started to morph into recovery in most areas. So 5 local government areas have already transitioned to recovery, and more will follow in the coming days and weeks. That transition happens at a local level. So it's local councils who are responsible for leading recovery initially. But for a disaster of this scale, councils obviously can't do that by themselves. And so that is why the regional and the state tiers of coordination and support are activated. In terms of ERV's role in all of this, so emergency recovery is largely a coordination organisation. We do provide some program delivery as well, but largely we are about coordination, and we coordinate both at a regional level. We've got people out across the regions of Victoria, but also at a state level. And for a big complex event like this, it's partly about supporting councils, particularly councils in the most affected areas, so the Murrindindis and Strathbogies, but also making sure that funding for major recovery initiatives at a state level is coordinated and is rolled out effectively across Victoria. So that has been the focus for us at the moment. In terms of looking at kind of key priorities, I was asked to think about key priorities for relief and recovery. So I'll go through. I've written down 5 of them, which I think is probably, there's lots of things we could focus on, but the things I wanted to focus on are mental health, that particularly because of the 18 local government areas that were declared in the state of disaster. All 18 of those were also affected by the October 22 floods, and many of them were affected previously by the fires in 2019-20. So we're talking about people who've been re-traumatised again and again and haven't had the space they need to recover. That psychosocial support is available through the Emergency Recovery Support Program, which DFFH runs and was announced a few days ago. And there's also practical supports, things like financial counselling, which provides assistance to people at a time when their whole lives are being turned upside down and it's very difficult for them. So mental health is a priority. Cleanup is the other priority, initially because it's hard to do anything while there's still chaos all around. And so an initial cleanup program was announced by government. there's a lot to do in that space, and there's a lot of levels that support that. So there's personal cleanup that people do themselves, there's cleanup which council supports with, and there's cleanup which will be run through ERV at a state coordinated level as well. Initially, that's been announced for residential uninsured and underinsured properties. There's an additional support for people to get waste disposal free of charge, so gate fee waiver at tips and things like that to help people to be able to start to manage their own cleanup as well. Temporary accommodation is the next priority I've got on my list here. Again, for obvious reasons, as people are displaced, the Emergency Relief Centre gets them through the first couple of days, but that is not an ongoing solution for people. And there are people who can stay with family and friends or have got somewhere else to go. But for a small number of people, there is nowhere else for them to go. And that is where the supports that are provided for them effectively keep them out of homelessness. So at the moment, there's a short-term accommodation support, which will provide accommodation for the next 28 days or so to make sure that people have a bit of time to find their feet and move on, and consideration, obviously, for what happens after that. Next priority on the list is about agriculture. In particular, the most immediate priority is livestock related. So securing fodder for livestock in areas where obviously the food that they would usually have is no longer available. And it's been challenging to get access for that, but that is something which has been supported by government to assist farmers with their livestock management. In addition, where livestock has been killed, there's quite a significant task in terms of carcass removal. Some farmers can do that effectively, others require assistance. But again, that is a top priority at the moment. And looking slightly further ahead, the government's announced primary producer grants and loans availability to help farmers get through what is obviously a challenging time. And maybe the last of the priorities that I list is perhaps almost the most important of all of them, and certainly the one I note which is on the agenda for me to speak to, which is about communications and information. So what we find when things like this happen is the people need information, and it is really important to be able to get timely, accurate information to people in a range of different ways, so that they know they can understand what their options are and what they need to do. In the heat of an emergency, that is done through Big Emergency, the app and the website. You can still use that. That's still available. There's a relief and recovery tab there, which we'll keep up to date for a little while. But actually, we try to direct people to the ERV website. ERV website has got everything in one place to do with relief and recovery. So I can even put the link in the chat for you if you like. But it's if people have been affected at all by the fires, everything they need to know is on that ERV website. It is kept up to date daily, and we'll connect them to everything else that needs to that's available to support. There is a 1-800 recovery hotline as well. We've produced some information sheets, physical copies for councils, and obviously people can always go to their local council. They can always go to BAU service supporters, but those functions can become overwhelmed at times of extreme need, like now. I note that a lot of councils have set up recovery hubs, so some of those places which had relief centres, as the relief centre closes, an information centre or a recovery hub is set up to connect people to the supports that they need at this time. Rob, I'm not sure how close I am to time, but that's probably the main things I wanted to say. Thanks, Deb.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dean. A lot to kind of get through. So thanks for working through that so quickly, but so calmly and comprehensively as well. And I guess just noting those 5 kind of key priorities that you mentioned, they are all intersecting as well, aren't they, in terms of just thinking about mental health, about thinking about the agricultural, livestock related issues, the temporary accommodation issues. They are like those boundaries are, very kind of porous. So it's great to see that kind of comprehensive approach to all of those matters. Thank you, Dean. I'm going to get you to switch off your camera now and your mic, and we'll return to you later in the event of kind of audience questions. But it's now my privilege to introduce Jana Kujajak. Jana, hopefully I've pronounced your name correctly. Jana's from the Municipal Association of Victoria, is the Climate Futures and Resilience Lead, and is going to talk to us about connecting locally. Really important, that kind of relationship between community sector organisations and local government authorities as well. So we're going to hear about recovery hubs and Municipal Association of Victoria committees. Thank you so much, Jana. Over to you.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for that introduction. So hi, everyone. My name's Jana. I'm from the MAV. We represent all 79 councils in Victoria. And it's important to note that councils play a really important role in emergency management throughout both relief, response and recovery. As you can imagine, this has been a really stressful time for many councils across our state and their communities. We've had a number of councils that have been personally impacted, so you can imagine many of our regional and rural councils that have local staff working for them, and they've actually had to enact their business continuity plans because their staff have been personally impacted by the fires. We've also seen many councillors themselves who are active community members, so for example, such as CFA volunteers who have been actively involved in the response, which has been incredible. But obviously this is placing extreme stress on councillors and council staff. As Dean noted earlier, it is a stressful time for our communities and our councils as well. So they'll be looking for mental health supports and all the support that we can all wrap around them at this stage. Just in terms of the current situation, we have seen an incredible job of councils and neighbouring councils sharing resources, really getting behind each other and supporting each other. And we've also noted that councils that were severely impacted, such as Strathbogie and Murrindindi, have been at capacity, reached their capacity pretty quickly. And so the MAV is working really closely with the relevant Victorian government departments to make sure that those councils are getting the right supports that they need on the ground. We also are the custodian of the Inter-Council Resource Sharing Protocol, which sets out arrangements for councils to share resources in amongst those sort of shorter term needs and provide that coverage. And because of some councils that have been stretched so quickly, we've been providing that on the ground support for coordination, particularly for Strathbogie and Murrindindi again. We've seen councils really doing a fantastic job at setting up relief centres really quickly, but also, as Dean mentioned earlier, they have mostly transitioned into recovery at this stage, and we've seen a number of recovery hubs that have been set up across the state, and that number will continue to grow. I'd just like to acknowledge that, yeah, we've seen some amazing work from all our local government sector to this point in time, and I know that councils are really ready to work with community organisations right across the state to make sure that our communities are supported throughout the long tail of recovery that this disaster will result in. So just a quick overview in terms of what the role of councils are in terms of coordinating recovery, hubs, committees and offices. Under our state emergency management plan, councils are the lead agency for forming, leading and supporting municipal recovery committees, and also providing recovery centres and recovery hubs. And this makes sure that our communities have access to the right recovery information that they need. Councils also have dedicated municipal recovery managers in place, which is actually a legislated role under our Emergency Management Act. And these managers are really important in ensuring that our communities get the information that they need and have the recovery supports coordinated in an effective way across their municipality. I think it's also good to note that many councils will have relief and recovery plans, and the councils that have been impacted by these bushfires will be getting ready to trigger those plans. And they really set the direction and determine the needs of recovery, the potential needs of in an emergency and in that recovery period. And councils also establish recovery committees, and these committees get together to develop a community recovery plan, make recommendations on the establishment of recovery hubs. They review impact data, and they also promote really strong collaboration between government and non-government agencies as well. And membership to these recovery committees can include community organisations. So I'd encourage you to check if you are already involved in community recovery organisations. Community recovery committees. Thanks, Lucy. I've noted the 1-minute warning. I'll just quickly mention that the state government and federal government have jointly announced 15 million to establish community recovery offices and recovery hubs, which is fantastic. And so they'll really be that one-stop shop for people to go to access services and information from both government and community organisations. So once those hubs and offices get off the ground, again, we'd really encourage you to reach into your councils to support the to make sure that information gets to our communities. And just to finish, just a bit of advice, I guess, from the MAV in terms of how community organisations can best plug into local council-led recovery initiatives. It's really important that you're speaking to the right person at council who has the right authorising environment and understands the broader picture when it comes to what's being delivered for communities around recovery programs and initiatives. So use your personal networks. That is amazing, and that's how we often get these programs off the ground, but just make sure that you're talking to the right person at council. And I'll pop my details in the chat if anyone has any questions around how to get involved with councils or anything else that we can assist with. Please feel free to reach out. I might finish there. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, John. I really appreciate it. And thank you, because that was a question I was going to ask you. I know you've got to head off shortly ahead of the Q&A, so for the best way to actually practically plug in. But so what I'm kind of hearing you say is that there are a number of kind of like staff positions that now will be stood up in kind of the days and weeks to come. It's keeping an ear to the ground for who those people are, but just ensuring that, you know, if you do have personal networks, not kind of confusing the roles of people that you're currently engaged with these kind of very dedicated specialised roles that are kind of being stood up. So if in doubt, thank you for making your details available, because I'm sure there'll be a kind of a centrally held list at Municipal Association of Victoria as the local government peak, so that we can be making sure that people are directing kind of their efforts and sharing their resources or information about their resources with the right people. So thank you so much for that, Jan. I really appreciate the insights that you've shared with us today and the incredible work of your members also. So thank you. I'll get you to switch off your camera and mic now, and I'm going to move quickly to now introduce Andrea Spiteri is next from DFFH, who's going to be talking about some of the support programs for individuals and families coming out of DFFH. Thanks, Andrea. And I think, Andrea, you might also be sharing screen for part of this as well. Is that correct? Great. So I'm going to switch off my camera, put myself on mute, and look forward to hearing your presentation as well, Andrea. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Deb, and hi everyone. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, so I'm hoping this works because I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I am with Teams. So just bear with me for 1 sec, and hopefully this will come across to you. Now let's see. I am sharing my screen, but I don't know whether you can see that on presentation mode. I think that might be right.
Fantastic, Andrea. It's Deb speaking, and we can see your screen, but we can kind of see the sidebar with the slides to kind of come. So you might not be in the exact right like screen sharing, but we can see your screen. So that's great, and it is the relevant kind of PowerPoint presentation. So thank you.
Well, we might just have to bear with that.
Yeah, that's fine, Andrea. Keep moving along.
Of time. So thanks, Deb. I really appreciate that. Look, I'd like to just introduce myself. So I'm Andrea Spiteri. I'm the Executive Director for Emergency Management for Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, and just like to acknowledge traditional owners and Aboriginal colleagues who are joining this call as well. Just a quick snapshot of some of the activities that the department has been undertaking. We have a range of relief and recovery responsibilities under the State Emergency Management Plan. So as of 5 p.m. last night, we had processed over 4,300 emergency relief payments to over $5 million. And those are those relief payments that people are accessing when they've got those unmet relief needs associated with maybe accommodation, food, water, some of the things that they need pretty quickly after an emergency. And we're still hearing from a lot of people over the Vic Emergency Hotline, which is a primary way of coming to us, but also where the department has staff out in most of the relief and recovery centres as well, and talking to people face to face. By far the most payments, about 1,800 of those payments have come from residents who are in Murrindindi Shire. So that's out of the Longwood fire. So that's a really critical focus for us. But we are paying those for the fires across the state that have occurred in January. In addition to that, we are responsible for coordinating emergency accommodation. I've just put a little graphic down the bottom because sometimes accommodation terms are used interchangeably. So emergency shelter is often what is provided in emergency relief centres that local councils run. Emergency accommodation is accommodation that is being managed by councils at the moment, but that's where they have people into hotels and motels in those initial sort of 28 days or so that Dean mentioned before. And at the moment, there are about 40 people in emergency accommodation. So we're working closely with local government at the moment to make sure that we can understand who the people are that are in emergency accommodation, have they received one of our relief payments to start with, and start to understand what their circumstances are in terms of the availability of other supports to them. And then we also have emergency psychosocial supports. So Australian Red Cross and Victorian Council of Churches Emergencies Ministry are two of our agencies who are funded for their role in psychosocial support. And there's psychological first aid and sort of emotional and spiritual care that's being provided in those emergency relief centres, in the recovery hubs across the state, and also starting to be via outreach as well as impact assessment teams go out into communities from councils as well. That's really important, and what we're hearing through those services is that there are a range of impacts for people. Dean mentioned earlier that we have people who are who were impacted by the 2009 Victorian bushfires, including on Black Saturday, and also in the 2019-20 bushfires, the Black Summer bushfires, as they're known. We are aware of at least 2 households who've lost everything again. And certainly the number of homes destroyed has continued to grow. So this psychosocial support in a number of different locations in a very targeted way is going to be really important to people in the short to medium and longer term. We also coordinate psychosocial supports throughout relief and recovery, so working really closely with Department of Health colleagues, education. Schools are back very shortly as well, but a range of early childhood centres are also in the mix there too. And also Agriculture Victoria. Again, Dean mentioned the impacts to primary producers and others on the land as well, particularly around animal welfare and some real distress that we understand has been caused by the fires. And so we work really carefully with them and have a joined up communications pack that is all about psychosocial supports, how to access mental health supports, what that means for primary producers and others on the land as well, which is really important to have those joined up messages. And we've also been following up on any impacted clients and services of ours as well. We know on the Catastrophic Fire Danger Day we had, and due to the fires, we had 14 specialist disability accommodation facilities that moved their residents out of harm's way. They're all back now, which is fantastic. We also know that there were over 50 children in care that needed to move as well. And we have a small number that have been impacted and that we are supporting as well. So sort of multifaceted approach from the department in regards to our emergency management responsibilities, as well as our BAU clients and services. I'm just going to move to the department's recovery activities now. I'm just hoping that's going to move. Okay, it has. So we have some larger payments that are available and have been announced called re-establishment payments. They've been activated. We've reached out to sort of 71 people so far and contacting more today. though that assistance is for people whose principal place of residence has been destroyed or significantly damaged. They are typically people on lower incomes who are uninsured, completely uninsured. And the payments are, as I said, means tested, and also depends how many people are in the household as well. So it's on a sliding scale up to just over $52,000. I've put a couple of key points in here as well for people to write down and take away. If you are coming across clients or people that you know just in the community who have been impacted in that way, please encourage them to ring the recovery hotline, and they can push option 4 to come through to us, or we're happy to have a referral come through on the email address there as well. We have a team that is dedicated to this assistance. In addition, we have the Emergency Recovery Support Program that has been activated and initially stood up. And as I have there, that's the single entry point for people, affected residents with a range of recovery needs. So we have stood up Windermere as the intake service there, and we have 4 agencies that are coming on and being engaged at the moment to provide that sort of local case support or case management that people might need. And we'll be announcing those later this week. We're just finalising those arrangements. And it's quite possible we'll have further agencies engaged there as well. Again, that service is available through the recovery hotline as well. Same number, option 2. We'll get through to Windermere and they'll start talking to people about their initial needs. We've had over 80 people reach out to us already, but we know many more will need that service. It's not just for people who've had their homes impacted. This is for people with a wide range of impacts, bushfire impacts. It could be small business. So what we're seeing so far in terms of the themes, small business impacts, agricultural impacts, questions on cleanup, questions on accessing mental health and wellbeing services, questions on accessing financial assistance, and there will be other services that will come on board. It's not just those recovery or emergency specific services though. They will also refer into existing services too. And we are also working really closely through our regional operations, working closely with local councils and some of the committees that stand up to coordinate recovery, to make sure that we understand some of the more localised supports that might be available too. So not just government programs, but those supports that might be in place through, local community groups, your Rotaries, your Lions and others as well. So we want to make sure that we've got really good information to be able to support people with their range of needs. Lastly, we can continue the emergency psychosocial supports. Just noting that we have a panel of, it's a psychosocial services panel. It has 10 experts and specialists with a range of expertise. Dr. Rob Gordon, David Younger, some of you might have met them before, but we also have Michael Gordon, who's a farmer himself and so does a lot of work with primary producers. We also have a specialist on there with an environmental background as well, where people are concerned about, the impacts to the environment and land care as well. So we do have a range of experts that are available. I've put the email address in there as well. It's not for community to express an interest, but it is for our sector and for agencies. If you're interested in looking at what maybe one of these experts can support you with, if there's a community briefing, community meeting that you are attending, or you think you might want to reach out, even some briefing of some staff who might be working with impacted communities, it can be really helpful through this panel. And then, as Dean mentioned, we know that people are going to find themselves in the situation where they might need some temporary accommodation and longer term accommodation and housing. So the department also has the responsibility to coordinate those services. And so we've commenced some planning around that. We are getting a range of information through all of our other services at the moment to understand what people's needs might be. But I just wanted to say that one of the key principles in that planning is to try and keep people on their property, if that's what they want, as local as possible to their community, and to support them with a range of different options where that's possible. So that's our primary focus, but we will continue to work with people coming through the recovery support program and also who we're talking to around those re-establishment payments as well. So I might just stop sharing my screen now. And I just wanted to, I guess, take this opportunity to really thank all of the services that are come online here today. I know everyone's doing an amazing job. I know a lot of you have got staff that have been impacted as well. These are really significant fires, and we're not out of the woods yet, unfortunately. So the fires up in the north of the state, in Gippsland, those fires are going to continue to grow, unfortunately. And we do have more fire weather to come in this summer. So please take care of yourselves. Please reach out to us if you need anything, and more than happy to answer any questions. Deb, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much for making the time to talk through that information. It's really valuable information, and thanks for the work that sits behind that in terms of standing up these supports. And I think your commentary now, just acknowledging the role of community organisations, community sector organisations, other kind of local actors, I think I imagine I'm not part of these communities. I'm sitting here in Melbourne, but I think that this will be, well received, that acknowledgement. I know that, for example, the chat that's been going off while you've been speaking, one, allied health service provider in Mansfield, for example, talking about in the interim stepping in really quickly to provide that psychosocial support using their expertise and capability at pace last week. So while, all these other things are being stood up. So thank you for that acknowledgement, and thank you to all the community organisations who are really putting their shoulder to the wheel at a really, really difficult time, while concurrently experiencing any range of kind of impacts as well. But thank you so much, Andrea, for making the time. I'm going to ask you to switch your camera off now and your mic, and I'm now going to quickly hand over to Mel Jo, who is the Manager of Emergency Response Programs within Consumer Affairs Victoria. Mel's going to talk specifically about financial counselling. So thank you so much, Mel. Over to you.
Thanks, Deb. As Deb mentioned, my name's Mel Jo. I manage the Emergency Response Program at Consumer Affairs Victoria. So as you will have seen last Wednesday through the Premier's media release, the government has allocated more than $4 million to provide financial counselling for communities impacted by the fires. So really helping Victorians access emergency assistance, navigate the recovery systems and stabilise their finances to help them rebuild. We will be administering this funding, and currently I'm working with organisations like Financial Counselling Victoria around the service needs, designs and the allocation of resources. I really understand the impacts to communities. It's not just homes, it's everyone's livelihoods, and we're working to ensure that the package of funding is set up in a way that will support the most affected Victorians and as many Victorians as possible, to make it so widespread that we really encompass everybody. In addition, what was also announced in the Premier's media release was funding to boost the Victorian Farmers Federation Financial Capability Support Program. So we're currently administering that, and we're going to bolster them so that they're able to provide early support and clear recovery pathways to reduce stress and help farming communities to recover. At this stage, that's all that I'm able to share about our program. We're still in the process of working it out so that we can administer it as best as possible. So as information becomes available, definitely be sharing that, and as well communicating with all the agencies directly for additional information for them. But we're definitely here to support, and as that financial counselling support becomes available, you'll be made aware of it. Just a quick one from me, Deb, so I'll welcome you back.
Thank you so much, Mel. So, when you're pressing your buttons and you're moving your fingers more quickly than the laptop is responding. But thanks so much for that, Mel. I will get you to switch your camera off. I had a question come in, but it might be one for Bronwyn or for you. So we'll just see. I'll introduce Bronwyn in the meantime. Thanks, Mel, for that presentation. So I've got Bronwyn Lay, Program Manager at Disaster Legal Help Victoria. Thank you so much, Bronwyn. And I know you have been working in this space for such a long time, Bron, both in your current role and past role. So it's really great to have you sharing your expertise today. Thanks. Over to you.
Thanks, Deb, and thanks everyone. I'll try and be quick because So just for those who don't know, Disaster Legal Help Victoria, I'm the program manager of that partnership, which is between the Federation of Community Legal Centres, Justice Connect, the Law Institute of Victoria, Victoria Legal Aid, Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service and the Victorian Bar. So effectively it's a partnership of all, pretty much the most of the legal sector in Victoria. And so what we do is we coordinate legal assistance, we look to address any gaps that appear, and we advocate for disaster affected and at-risk communities. So also I wanted to say while I'm here, one thing that's really important in this work that we all witness, and I'm sure you all know, is this collaboration that's built across scales. For example, working with VCOSS, also Financial Counselling Victoria. At the local level, we witness it from between the peaks and between the sectors. This is particularly important for our sector because legal needs almost never arise without other issues. So this means that integrated services and that information sharing is super important, because one of the issues with legal needs is that they're hard to identify. And they also have a long tail in terms of appearance. So something that might not look like a legal need today will manifest in months and years later with much more severity. So what we do is that legal support, because we all know that the volume and diversity of administration that follows a disaster is quite huge and can also be very problematic for communities, the level of administration. There's also many different areas of law within that administration. So some of the common legal issues that our partners and those on the ground are already seeing that are emerging are those in relation to small business. Disaster assistance grants is one, social security and Centrelink, employment legal issues. So that's such as when businesses become inoperable and entitlements around that. Tenancy, with the repairs to homes that have been damaged, but also how to end tenancy early. Temporary accommodation, as people have moved and require that due to the disaster. Insurance is a really big one. That's both for individuals and businesses. And there's also a lot of legal issues that arise, such as family violence. And we need to be careful of these other legal issues that come in, like family violence, that can get exacerbated or compounded due to the pressure from a disaster. Another important one is lost documents, because in order to even start a lot of these administrative processes of recovery, you need those documents. So disaster legal needs are many and varied, and we're here. Please seek guidance from us or any of our partners or the CLCs on the ground if you're in doubt as to whether something is legal or not, because there's also other issues that pop up in terms of emergency management issues and power and communications outage. So the local services that are active, and I just have to put my hats off to the sector which has responded so quickly. The business continuity during the period was just done really amazingly, and that is also due to cooperation on the ground between services. So those that are active in the areas impact is ARC Justice, so that's Goulburn Valley, Loddon, Campaspe, and we will we will send out all the contact details for this. Allied Justice, which is Grampians around the Ballarat and Horsham region. Hume River Arena Legal Service. Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service is a statewide service, and Victoria Legal Aid also has regional offices. We have specialist legal services that can really come in and assist when it comes to those insurance legal needs. So that's Consumer Action Law Centre, and they also have a workers line that people on this call can contact if they have queries for support in cases that come towards them. We have Social Security Rights Victoria. Tenants Victoria also has a workers line that can be contacted for support. Job Watch in terms of employment rights, and Justice Connect. So this goes back to those issues to do with small business, and so Justice Connect can link community and workers into private practitioners and firms, and they have a prioritisation of disaster impacted help seekers. So our job at DLHV is liaising with these local services, supporting our partners and intelligence gatherings. So across the whole sector, where we're able to respond as quickly and as timely as possible. And this also includes the administration of justice. So ensuring, court lists and sittings that occur during disasters, that's because missed hearings can have a significant impact on legal consequences. We have a website. We manage the DLHV website. Those details will be sent through. That is a great repository for all sorts of legal issues that we have gathered over the past 5 years. Any questions about the legal issues, that is a great first step to have a look through. We also have a phone line which is statewide, a 1-800 number, 1-800-113-432. We'll put that through as well. And so this is a statewide service for anybody who's disaster impact. And it's also a central point for connecting interlegal support. What we're doing is we're creating rosters and working with other services to really identify what the community legal education and information needs are going to be in the next few weeks and organising for them to be delivered. We're also developing materials that can be sent out. If you have any requests for materials that you would like to receive in relation to the issues that I outlined before, please contact us because we have a lot of them. Also, a lot of them are on the website. And I think that's all for the moment, and I'll hand back to you, Deb.
Thanks so much, Bron. Just a wealth of knowledge and information, as always. This brings us to the end of the session. I want to acknowledge there's been a lot of information that's been shared today. Please do have a look at what's been put into the chat. Lots of contact numbers, names, contact details, etc. We'll be producing just an email after this event. We'll be sharing to everyone who has registered. We'll be sharing more widely across the sector so that you've got all that information at a glance. There's a broader kind of resource pack that my colleague Lucy Mann at VCOSS has pulled together with colleague Julianne Tice as well. So all of this information will be kind of packaged up for you, sent to you post-event and shared more widely. That we don't have time for questions and answers in real time now, but I do want to note I understand that of many of the questions that were put into the Q&A box while this event has been underway, colleagues have been answering some of those questions in real time. Again, we will share that information more widely. Anything that we didn't get to in the session today, we will kind of take that on notice. We'll come back to you with answers to those questions. I want to thank everyone for making their time available to VCOSS today. Our excellent speakers, thank you for joining us at such a busy time. Thank you to our audience as well for, again, jumping online, making your time available, sharing this time with us with very short notice. If you'd like to stay connected with VCOSS and other community organisations who are involved in recovery and support following the bushfires, we do have our VCOSS Disaster Resilience Network that's open to all. Great place for peer learning and networking and information sharing. Link to information about that Disaster Resilience Network is also in the chat. Will be shared post-event again as well. As I mentioned, we'll send the recording after this session along with links to the key programs. In the meantime, the best place to find current information is the Victorian Emergency website or the Relief and Recovery page on the Victorian Government website. Again, we'll put those links in the chat right now. And finally, big thanks to the VCOSS team as well for pulling this event together so quickly. Particular shout out to Lucy Mann, as well as Amy Houston, Andrew Ramage, Jonathan Gurry, Julianne Tice. Forgive me if I've forgotten anyone else in the VCOSS team. Thanks everyone. Enjoy your afternoon as best you can, and solidarity to all those who are on the front line working with impacted communities as well. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.